Hello everyone and everything, and welcome back to more Hollow Knight. In the last episode, we beat the Pantheon of the Artist, and went back and basically 100%ed the first Pantheon as well, unlocking a lot through here in Godhome. In this episode, we will be leaving Godhome and venturing back into the greater world, but first we do have a little bit of unfinished business from last time. That being that we unlocked Shio down here in the Hall of Gods. So logically, we ought to take him down in both Ascended and Radiant. I'm going to go ahead and just skip Attuned, because we've probably seen plenty of this guy for now. Okay. Now let's take him down on Ascended. Luckily for us, there's no real big differences through here. And this is probably, apart from Oro and Mado, the first boss that we have fought here in the Hall of Gods where really nothing's changed since the first time we fought them. So, I don't have a whole lot to say here. But, with the fact that he does double damage, more sort of like damage boosting stats, or i.e. going all in and doing your best to just ignore the damage he does to you, are not really gonna cut it here. To the point that I'm dead. Alright. No big deal. Just come on straight back through again. Once again, we're just gonna go with the turn-based combat approach, making sure we give him time to dodge and attack. Every time. I actually didn't do it right there, but that's fine. Didn't pay too much of a price for it. Being too close to him just doesn't pay, and I guess I have a bit of a story about this guy. He took me a ton of time to figure out how to Radiant. That wasn't nice. And really, that just came down to the fact that this was the point where I figured out that my number one tip against Radiant bosses, that being to do your best to just ignore dealing damage and try to just dodge. That was how I best figured out, because I thought for a long time that the key to beating this guy without getting hit would just be sneaking over behind him, but that just wasn't the case. Now, of course, on Radiant, we are going to be absolutely careful as we can be. Since you're spending a lot of time in between attacks on this fight, whoops. Let's try that again. Since you're spending a lot of extra time in between attacks on this fight, I do recommend trying to get in some nail slashes to really boost the damage that you can do. Or I should say nail arcs. Oh, not good. Oh, that worked out. Never mind. As with any boss that has a lot of projectiles, Shio here is going to be especially tough to Radiant, but since we know his AI really well by this point, he shouldn't actually be too much of an issue. All you have to do is just dash in, dash out, dash in, dash out. You know the drill by this point. We should not be here for too long. But I'm definitely thinking our Overcharm set could help out a lot here, especially with Nailmaster's Glory. Back into the swing of things, never mind. I really wish you'd stop doing that. Dang it! Nope! Shoot! There we go. Not too bad, I just had to start using some more Descending Darks. But that's gonna wrap us up here for now. Let's go with a bit of a weird set that I've never really had much excuse to use. Let's use Fury of the Fallen. Fury of the Fallen can be very useful when taking on Ascended boss fights down here, since, of course, its main drawback of dying when you're at 1 health is more so counteracted when going up against a Dream boss of any kind, but obviously there's no way to get down to 1 health against a Radiant boss fight. Still can come in a lot of handy in the Pantheons as well. Back on the outside, it seems that the Greater Godseeker has perked up a bit. Creeper, did thee wake us? Revived this kingdom, these gods, tuned and bested, gleaming in mind, bright, sharp. And this, Our form swells, large, nay, immense, majestic. Hibernation, so long forced upon us, yet the shell that results is strong, so strong. Thine gaze is adoring, ye must think us godly, amusing, foolish, but thou art faced with enormity and beauty, true. Hallownest, even fading, a glorious land of gods. Never, never! The gods here will never die. Well, I think we're gonna do a pretty good job of seeing to that. Oh, and way up at the top here, it looks like Flukmarm has come out of her little home. Glah, glah, strange thing, lurking, waiting, glah, glah. Mother's treasures, too scary, glah. Go away, glah, glah. Can it see me? Can it smell me? Oh, mother. So we're actually going to head a bit of a different way here today. I messed it up. Hang on. Can I get back up there? I can. We're going to head back through the waterways. Back in the room with all the Flukemungas. Ow. There we go. Decided while I was here to go ahead and clear out there. When predators are too successful, the surplus food they eat becomes soft bulk, wrapped around their bodies. Still, these creatures at least seem to make good use of their additional weight. That's true. While we were in there, it seemed we also got another new bio for Shio. Skilled and respected master of the nail, always eager to learn new things. O God-inspired master of arts, whose work shall eternal endure, pure beyond our minds and hearts, reveal to us the God most pure. Prayer to the artist. Alright, going back through the waterways was a mistake. I still get lost here so badly. Should have just gone back through the city and come down through the elevator shaft. But still, we made it back to where I wanted to go. Which is back where we fought and spoke to the Dung Defender, back underneath his arena. We go there now. This trigger, I believe, is activated after beating the game for the first time. We find him dreaming. And it seems he dreams of the White Palace, of all things. You know, if any boss in this game deserves a rematch, it's the Dung Defender. His first showing was, well, let's just say it was less than flattering. So let's see. Has he ironed out the weaknesses we used to absolutely stomp on him before? He's off to a good start here, as he can no longer be staggered, but what about his attacks? Once again, he has the Butterfly Stroke, the Shot Put, the Curl, and the High Dive. He also has a new addition to his repertoire, the Spike Wave. The Butterfly Stroke has been more streamlined than changed. He'll now only do one cycle of this attack, only traveling forwards a short distance instead of swimming all the way across the screen. This makes sense. With the original version, you'd probably have already either dodged or gotten hit within the first cycle, so him stopping makes him feel a lot more proactive. But this also means that it can now be dodged more easily without jumping. It comes out pretty quick. You'll want to be ready to dash away from it the moment you see it come out. Dashing through it or jumping will work here as well, but I'll skip ahead a tad and let you know that dashing away keeps you safer from his other attacks too. Shot Put hasn't changed too much, though I believe an effort has been made to make him target the corners with this attack, making them significantly less safe than they once were. They're still generally the safest place to be while he does this, but you might have to actually dodge just a little bit if you decide to hunker down. As before, the biggest problem with this attack isn't really the dung balls themselves, it's the swipe he does with his arm when throwing them. If you're really careful or have a longer nail, you can still lay on some damage when he does this, but if you're not feeling it, there's no shame in just staying away. I also want to point out that the dung balls can be destroyed with spells. This will be more relevant with another attack, but using an Abyss Shriek here to clear the field can be pretty smart. Also be aware that he has two variants to this attack. The first will be for him to toss 2 balls in a row, and then to return to his usual behavior. However, if he throws 3 dung balls, he will always follow up the third with the curl attack. As before, this is the only situation where he will ever use Curl, and it's almost completely identical. He's extremely susceptible to your knockback, which you can use to keep him away from you, and he'll only conclude this attack after hitting the ground 3 times. Now, you may remember that in the original fight, we could take advantage of this attack by juggling him in midair, so does that still work? You bet your dung balls it still works, and even better than before. Remember, he can no longer be staggered, and that means if you get him trapped up here, there is no escape. He can literally do nothing about this besides wait for you to drop your combo. If you can get the rhythm of this attack down, the whole fight will basically roll over for you. But it's definitely not a sure thing that he'll be bouncing at the right angle for you to do this, so I guess we might as well move on to see what he does if you let him bounce 3 times. He'll wind up in midair and use a unique variant of the Spike Wave, which causes the spikes to spread across the entire arena. These can be dodged by double jumping, but use the Shade Cloak or Descending Dark to just let them pass you by. But he's still not done. After using the Super Spike Wave, he'll be burrowed underground, and he'll finally finish the series of attacks with a High Dive. The High Dive has probably received the most buffs of his old attacks, most notably that he is now immune to the Desolate Dives while underground. So no more cutting off this attack before it starts. It will also be accompanied by a total of 10 Dung Balls, 5 to each side, with the nearest falling close enough to the defender that standing close to him to avoid them is a little uncomfortable. This is where the Abyss Shriek really shines. When he jumps up from the ground, you let one loose to deal damage to him while he's airborne and destroy any dung balls above you. All of that is true of both the normal version of this attack and the one he uses at the end of the full combo. The only difference is that for the regular version, he'll stay underground for a bit and move around in an attempt to target you. You may also remember that the Dung Defender would try to use a special version of this attack after his HP got low enough, but thanks to his weakness to ground pound spells, we never really had to deal with it. Well, with the White Defender's newfound immunity, we definitely have to deal with it now. At 600 HP remaining, he'll let out a battle cry, dive into the ground, and perform 6 dives in rapid succession. This is actually really tough to fully avoid, as he moves around and bursts up from beneath you really fast. And while you can rely on Abyss Shrieks to avoid one volley of dung, it's unlikely you'll have a full set of 6 to use for this attack, so you'll likely end up avoiding at least some of the volleys the old-fashioned way. My main recommendation is to dash liberally while he's underground to keep him from being directly beneath you. If you can manage that, it's pretty smooth sailing. Finally, the Spike Wave is an extremely threatening addition to his move pool. It comes out quite fast, and while the grounded version of this attack doesn't cause spikes to travel across the whole screen, instead only forming 3 on each side, it's not going to make much of a difference if you're too close to him. And unlike the others, these ones reach up to the ceiling, so no jumping over top. This attack is the main reason dashing away from him is your best bet in most situations, as this attack leaves no blind spots above him or behind him. Retreat is the only option. So basically, for our game plan, we can afford to be pretty aggressive, wailing on him whenever he's not moving. But anytime you see him so much as twitch, dash in the other direction. This should keep you safe from the initial hitbox of any of his attacks, and give you enough space to avoid the rest. He can also do this backwards dash, but give him space when he does that too, as he'll usually follow that up with a Spike Wave. And honestly, there's not much more to it than that. The corners are still relatively safe, though not the impenetrable fortresses they once were, so if you need some healing, you can usually get away with doing it in the corner. And of course, if you get the hang of juggling him, it trivializes the entire fight. Much like before, nearly everything in this fight is made much easier with Mark of Pride. If there's anything left to say, I think it's that we should all be very, very glad that he only does 1 damage. I'm just so gosh darn thankful that he doesn't do double damage like other rematches do. Been a while since we've had a proper Dream rematch, hasn't it? Ooh, looks like he is about to just bend over for us. Oop, never mind. I messed it up. That's okay. Probably best that we don't just get through this entire first fight with no effort whatsoever. I've also brought the Dream Wielder through here, because I want to show off this guy's dream dialogue while we do this. Hegemol, I miss your humor. Alright, here we go. I wonder if I can just wrap this up like so. If we look in the background, there are some pretty interesting yikes. Yes, some pretty interesting yikes. Some pretty interesting statues or glowing figures. Some of which may look familiar to you if you've been paying a lot of attention. One of which almost definitely looks familiar to you. I won't point out which one, though. Alright, can we just, I don't know if I'm gonna get this done here. This strategy, some people say it's made easier with Quick Slash. I don't think so. That's okay. I am really glad that this guy got a Dream rematch. I'm just not so sure I would have done it this way. He's a lot stronger, don't get me wrong, but we'll see what makes this guy really special in a little bit. But we get a couple things for beating him. The achievement Memory. My friends, I will protect our dear kingdom. Have faith in me. We will meet again. I promise. Now, oddly, even though we got the dream essence, he still lies sleeping. We also got his journal entry. A figure from a fondly remembered past reacts gallantly to defeat by becoming stronger. The champion's call, the knotted grove, the battle of the black worm. I remember it all. I will carry those glories with me always, until we meet again. Ogrum of the Five Knights. It's not entirely clear who this Ogrum is, but that's the first we've heard of the Five Knights. I believe, actually, it may be the second we've heard of the Five Knights. But if we come back in here, he now does double damage. This is identical to if if we were fighting him in the Hall of Gods, doing an Ascended boss fight. No other major changes. Let's see if we can get another Dream Nail on him. Zamir, I miss your stories. Oh, this is a good spot too. Hegemol, I miss your humor. All names that we have not really heard before. You already said that one. That was not 3 bounces. What was that? You're cheating now. Obviously, fighting this guy with double damage is going to be a significant boost in his difficulty, but we have already been through a lot worse, so not too worried about this. He is, I would say... Actually, this is a good time to talk about this. My little difficulty setting thing definitely falls apart now that we've been fighting Radiant bosses. There we go. Essentially, the numbers, once they start doing literally infinite damage, become pretty meaningless. I'm only really doing them for the Radiant bosses for fun. They really shouldn't be used as a measure of how actually difficult they are. My king, I believe in you. I believe in hollowness. My devotion will never falter. And he remains sleeping still. It messes with my OCD that we wake up with whatever soul and damage we've taken from the fight before, but seems his sleep is a little more disturbed than it was when we first came through here. Let's dive back in. That's right, we have a third rematch with him. And it works probably exactly how you'd expect, with him now doing 3 damage, the first foe we've found to do such a thing. At least it's easier than coming in against a Radiant foe, but still, triple damage is no small potatoes. I'm still gonna try and get some dream dialogue on him. Yzma, I miss you. Now that is a name we've heard before. Yzma's Grove is the one that he stands vigil over and protects. Oops, I died. Yzma, Hegemol, Vanir, Ogrum. I believe that's... Come on. That's 4 out of 5 knights. And Trya, I miss your wisdom. Now that would seem to be the name of the 5 in the back there, but if you look closely, the one in the center is pretty obviously the king. He has the exact same horns, so it would surprise me to know that anyone else looks like that. Alright. But Isma is the only one of those 5 that we have definitely met before. But that tells us the 5 knights, who again I believe were mentioned once by Lem, but not in any significant capacity, just in passing. Probably the first time that we gave him, one of the first times we gave him a King's Idol. And you may remember, we've seen a couple of King's Idol bearers throughout the past, but none of them quite looked like this. Except for the Dung Defender himself. My king, Hallownest will be reborn, glorious and bright, just as it always was. He did mention to us, back when we came and visited him, that when left alone with his dreams and his memories, he does tend to get a little caught up in things. It's gonna take a lot more to jolt him out of it. We have a 4th rematch to go. And you know the pattern at this point. This one does 4 damage per hit. Meaning we can only take 2. And we'd have to heal up quite a bit in order to fully restore after even 1 of those hits. If you've been relying on some quick and deep focus, yikes! This is the point where that's gonna really stop helping too significantly. But still definitely a possibility, as something that you can do if you really need. Now, if we use some process of elimination here, figure out the 4 knights that he's referring to, when there were indeed 5th, we can figure out that by process of elimination, this guy is the 5th knight, Ogrum. Unless you want to assume that the king's true name was Ogrum, which is not the case. I'm just going to go ahead and spoil that now. But while we're here, we can start putting together at least some of the ones that we've seen. The one on the left. We've seen that statue before, as well as the large nail on her back. That is the Grey Mourner, whose apparently true name was Vimir. Wouldn't have guessed that she was one of the Knights Quartermasters. Or champions, as it were. My king, we will all be together once more. Back in again, we have only 1 rematch left to go. The 5th and final one where he does 5 damage. The knight on the right is probably the one you most recognize. The False Knight, or Failed Champion, with the massive armor and enormous head spikes. Now, this isn't the maggot that we fought before, but rather the knight that maggot stole the armor from. The really strong knight that he aspired to be as strong as. And presumably, the Failed Champion is the fight, or in all things except for the maggot within, is as strong as Hegemel was in life, and he definitely strikes me as one of the king's strongest. We can also see that the 5 statues he's got here also reflect the 5 knights. We've got the False Knight, who I'll go ahead and tell you was Hegemel, the Grey Mourner, Vimir, and then the 2 ones who we haven't figured out the names of, and himself, Ogrum. Back into the thick of it, I'm kind of out of things to say. I guess I didn't really come in packing 5 boss fights worth of commentary, but we might as well talk about his room here. I don't really know. I'm glad we didn't find this place in the White Palace. I think a room entirely full of dung probably didn't really fit the king's aesthetic, I would say. This must have been tucked away somewhere we couldn't reach. I'd appreciate it if you did one of the bounces that I can actually juggle you with, mister. I suppose he also brings something interesting into pretty stark variation. the names of the bosses, things like Soul Tyrant, White Defender, Dung Defender, none of these are the names of the actual boss. Just about the only boss whose name we really know. Dang it! I was starting down that trail of thought. I was going to say Hornet, but thinking about it more, there are a number of bosses whose names we actually know. All the Dream Warriors, for one, Umu, Grim, things like that. But there are definitely a number whose names we do not know, and whose names we will never know. For example, what is the name of the maggot inside Hegemon's armor? All we know him as is the False Knight. And at least we finally know how he got that name. Imitating one of the king's 5 knights. Ah, shoot! I suppose I might as well bring up that none of those in the back look like who I suppose we could have assumed was Isma. Although it's very possible that the moss statue in Isma's Grove was just a statue and not actually her husk. I suppose it would be kind of grim if that were her husk, so we can assume that that was just a monument to her, more or less. Which would make the one on the right of the king Isma, and the one on the left of the king the 5th one whose name is slipping my mind right now. And I can't exactly look at my notes to find out, because I have got one heck of a juggle streak going on right now. Come on, Ogrim, you and me. To the end of the... Shoot. Didn't quite nail it. Probably at least got your last phase, though. Oh, man! Still skipped your second phase. Heck yeah! Ooh, that's how we do it. Alright, that 5th knight's name is... Dryap. How funny that I see you in my dreams too, little one. Your noble bearing reminds me of our dear king. When he returns, I'll ask him if you can become a knight. What jolly adventures we will have. And awake at last. Ah, you're awake and looking well rested. I was startled when I woke to find you curled up beside me, but, of course, you're welcome to rest here whenever the world wearies you. As the king granted his kingdom to shelter to those who needed it, I offer my home. Stay as long as you like, down here where it's cozy and warm and moist. My cave may seem a far cry from the finery of the palace, but even still, the memories of my former comrades and our glorious king remain fresh in my mind. The Pale Court was a wondrous place, full of the age's greatest heroes. Ah, looking at you now, I can easily imagine you standing amongst them. And that is all we have for that, but we can see he also made a little statue of the king to match the statues he made of the 5 knights. If we real fast leave and come back, the Dung Defender is gone, but he made a 6th statue. One for us. No thoughts imbued to it, but it's always nice to feel honored. And we can look far and wide, but unfortunately we will not be finding Ogrim again. But that's okay, we know that he's well, and he can most certainly take care of himself. Bit of an obvious one, but it's not really a question of what that dream fight means in particular. That is his memories of Ogrim in the height of his glory, as powerful as he ever was. Nothing too ambiguous there. Now that's just about everything we have time for today, but we are going to make one last stop here in the in the Queen's Gardens. And I have put on the Defender's crest just for this. Back up past where we fought the Traitor Lord, back at the White Lady's den. You may have forgotten this little corpse outside of her, but it bears a perfect resemblance to that mysterious 5th knight who we fought before, Dryia. Apparently, Drya's task was defending the White Lady from the Traitor Lords. A task she gave her life for, it seems, but a worthy cause, no doubt, in her mind. Apparently known well for her wisdom. And if we come down here to the White Lady, that's Scent. Does another travel with you? Is that you, Ogrim, my mighty knight? I cannot see you, but then time has clouded my eyes, and I cannot see much. Even your booming voice falls silent upon me. Only this small one I register, if maybe because it shares some piece of myself. This one stands clear upon the misted world. Ah, but my, that potent smell does recall such joyous memory. Only a short moment we had together, compared to ruin now endured, but what shining times they were! I am grateful you would visit, even if to see me in a somewhat faded form.
Merma.
Dear Ogrim, I'm sure if you saw Drya on the way in, she stood guard over me for so long. Despite her hard front, she's always been a caring type. I'm sure she'll much enjoy a knight's reunion.
Pianero.
And since the last time we came down here, we have finished the King's Soul, the first half of which she gave us. So she now says, "Ah, so it bears our once fractured soul, now complete, such strength, such resolve, such dedication. Is it more than simply a vessel? I almost feel like I'm once again in the presence of my beloved worm. The King's Soul. What is at the heart of it, I wonder? If its curiosity wills it, it should seek out that place where it was born, where it died, where it began." A hint as to where to go next, since there is still a journey in our mind, the second path that has been oft alluded to. But I'm going to call it there for this episode. We didn't exactly get a ton done, but what we did accomplish was no small feat whatsoever. And we did get at least a hint as to where our journey is going to lead us next. So, I will see you guys in the next episode, when we continue doing a little bit of exploring around the overworld, perhaps poking our dream nail in more places it does not belong. That didn't come out right. Whatever. See you guys next time.